Hey y'all, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, the special education boss. If you've ever felt confused, overwhelmed, or just plain frustrated at the 504 IEP table, you are in the right place. Every week, I'm breaking down the rules, the rights, and the realities of special education so you can walk into meetings informed, empowered, and ready to make real change. And whether you're a parent, a teacher, an advocate, a school-based member, or somebody who's just trying to do right by a student, this podcast gives you straight talk, real answers, and tools that you can use immediately. I'm not here to play politics. I'm not here to play sides. I'm here to train people who sit at the table and teach you how to follow the law, ask the right questions, and protect the rights of students. So go ahead and hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change. We're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.
Welcome. We might have some friends joining us tonight. We're excited. We're going to go a little long tonight because, who doesn't want to go long? Yeah. We are ready to answer your questions. Yes, I did see the Sci-Fair Independent School District, Lowry Elementary. Did you guys see that? That was ridiculous. Like, we just make up stuff in special ed and it's in education that's not even real.
Magaludi says, we have to leave the country for a few months. Can a child on IEP get virtual education when in elementary?
No, if you leave the country, the child's no longer enrolled in public school.
Bad things to grandmas do says, mom won't sign the IEP after 30 days and the director won't do implied consent. Now what?
There's no such thing as implied consent. Somebody has to sign the IEP. And I know what it's like to be a grandparent or the aunt, or I had that same situation in my own family, and this is what I do for a living, and I couldn't help my very close relative. The guardian, the surrogate parent, or the parent has to sign the IEP if you want it to move forward.
Can a school suspend a student with an IEP and then deny to provide services and work while the student is out?
When you say suspend, there's different kinds of behavioral interventions. There's a suspension, and then there's an expulsion. Unless you've been expelled from the school, a suspension means that's where you'll have a term of time. You still have to deliver the IEP with fidelity. I had a kiddo that had charge syndrome. She's deafblind, so she has an interpreter, and she had in-school suspension, I think, for a week. I said, she didn't have an interpreter. He goes, that's how suspension works here. They have to learn. So when you remove a child from their campus for disciplinary action, unless they're expelled, you still have to implement the IEP. You have to implement the IEP in ICU. You have to implement the IEP at out-of-district placement. You have to implement the IEP if they're participating in the criminal justice system. You have to implement the IEP.
Can a student receive RTI if you have an IEP in an ICT class?
Yes, you can still receive RTI for a content area. Remember, RTI is for a minute. It's for a minute to see if this modality is going to be beneficial. Let's say that you have a reading deficit and the teacher says that you need RTI in written expression. She can certainly provide that, but it doesn't replace testing for special education or special education services.
A student is being abusive daily. I've documented what can I do to make sure this child is appropriately placed.
That is contingent upon a really good administration, because that doesn't sound like that's the right setting for that student.
Can a school district, SEC, tell parents that we do not do one-to-one for students?
We do whatever the student needs. If a student needs a giraffe to benefit from their educational product, we give them that. So we don't do something is where you go, I'm stop you right there. Nowhere in this book does it say we don't do something. In fact, it says just the opposite. We do what the student needs to benefit from their education. So this is the federal law, and we have it in our link. You should know it. I would be surprised if there's a copy of this at your school. It's $40. Go on and get it. But the law says that we provide the student that they need to benefit from their IEP. And we write an IEP to address their unique circumstances and write an IEP so they can make progress. If they need a one-on-one to make progress, then so be it.
If a child is visually impaired, are they required to have a para in the room?
No, I've got lots of kiddos that have a visual impairment. They don't need a para in the room. We provide para support when the student needs it around certain content area or functional or emotional needs.
And the team tell you your child has to go to another school to be self-contained without you agreeing.
Yes. So if the student needs a certain program and that self-contained program doesn't exist at that campus, then it's an IEP committee that they need the program. And it would be great if every program was on every campus, but it's not. And almost every service is be available at the high school level. But there are school districts that have 60 elementary schools. We're not have every program at every campus.
What would we need to prove to the district that they're lacking in to get out of district placement?
So when looking at out-of-district placement, you're usually looking, not always, but you're usually looking at a behavioral need, a neurological need, an emotional need that cannot be addressed solely in educational setting. You're often looking at a placement where they would have access to physicians or professional counselors and the ability to change or adjust medication. So you're looking at a student that cannot be provided an education anywhere in the entire district.
What can I do about a teacher withholding recess from my special needs daughter because of behavior?
What are you talking about? Recess is not something you get to grant or not grant. You don't get to control recess. I would reach out to your state compliance and say, this teacher is denying my child recess. Please tell me my next steps. But that is so illegal.
If a child is confined to a single room in a school for 6 hours and not allowed to leave,
okay. So we don't use the word okay in special education. We use the A word. Is that appropriate? I have kiddos that will be self-contained for the totality of their educational career for a number of reasons. Safety, access to functional needs. I don't like it. When I'm involved, there's usually some way that we can figure out a way for them to be with their non-disabled peers, whether that's for lunch or library or science or social studies during labs, something. It would be very rare that I would have a child that needs to be in self-contained all day long. That would be greatly concerning to me.
And we've got a couple people asking about the book. What was the name and where can they get it?
So this is the federal code. So this is in our link in the bio. Just go to the Amazon link. So this is the Office of Federal Registry, Code of Federal Regulations, Volume 204. This is IDEA. This is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And here's the good news. Not much of this has changed since 1975. And I know that sometimes you guys show up with Pete Wright's book, and I love Pete Wright. But this is the law. You need to show up with the law. You need to learn how to articulate that. If you don't have the law, or if you can't afford to get the book, it's $40, then go to d.gov, that's the U.S. Department of Education, and you can print out IDEA. It would be 115 pages, but you could print it out there. Avail yourself. And just real quick, it's just ed.gov.
Does a student have to be evaluated before being placed on an IEP?
A student has to be evaluated to see if they qualify for an IEP or a 504 plan, correct?
Tripper the Corgi says, can a reading teacher decline to work with a child? The IEP calls for additional reading support.
No, this is not a buffet. I'll decline that. No, it's part of your job. If you can't do your job, then we need to find somebody else to do it.
Is there other schools my daughter can attend other than public school for a special needs program?
So it's always your decision where you believe it's best for your child to receive an education. The choices are limited, right? There's public education. There is no better setting than public education when we get it right. And we almost always get it right. There are times that we don't. There's the option to homeschool. There is the option of homeschool co-ops. There are online options for K through 12. It's very rare that I've seen special education private schools provide the student the totality of what they need. And let's talk about that for a second. I live in Houston, a city of gazillion people. We have a great school for kiddos that are highly impacted by autism. It's $57,000 a year. We have the parish school for kiddos that have emotional needs or have an intellectual disability. It's $1 gazillion a year. We have Briarwood, which is an amazing school for kids that have a specific learning disability. It's $25,000 a year. I don't have $25,000 a year or the ability to transport them there. And we live in a monster city. It's just very rare that you're going to have a private school that addresses special needs. It's going to give them the totality, right? That education, emotional needs, functional needs, but those are your options.
Is it legal for the district to exit a student from his IEP when the parent didn't sign the IEP?
I think that we are confused about the signing thing. This whole notion and this online training of don't sign the IEP. I don't know who taught you that. You're sitting in a setting, we're talking about the federal law, federal funding. You better sign something and you better capture your position. I'm in a state where I'm allowed to represent families in due process hearings, interpret state and federal special education law without being a litigator, and I do that. I would never tell somebody to not sign something. If those documents go before a hearing officer, a state appellate judge, or a mediation officer, and the school signed and you didn't, what does that look like? It looks like you're not collaborating with the school. Sign and capture your position. If your position is, I think this is a bunch of baloney, then write that down. If you agree, write that down. If you agree, but you don't agree to some things, write that down. And then anything that's not agreed upon or the school you believe is denying you that, then have them provide you that denial in a prior written notice. But this whole don't sign is really bad teaching.
Can a student have a daily positive behavior chart while an FBA is being completed?
Anybody can have a behavior chart. You can have a behavior chart if you're a general ed student, a 504 student, or a special ed student, for sure.
What is an IEE?
Independent education evaluation. It's an independent education evaluation provided by somebody who doesn't work for the school district, but meets the criteria for being a vendor for them. So let's say that you get an evaluation, you disagree with it. I just got an evaluation from Florida. And all my moderators, I asked for all 7 Gs. When you get an IQ test, we want all 7 Gs. So we had this big back and forth, and there was yelling. I wasn't going to do it. So we reached out to the director. We're going to get it done. We just got the evaluation back. Not only did she not do 7 Gs, she didn't do 5 Gs. 2. We're certainly going to ask for an IEE. We're going to ask for somebody that has the qualifications to do a full cognitive evaluation in Florida to look at this child to see if she has a specific learning disability. If you disagree with the totality of the school's evaluation or parts of the evaluation, you can ask for an independent education evaluation at the expense of the district.
Another question regarding an IE. Is it normal for an IE to be a neuropsychological evaluation?
No, because that's a lot of money. School districts are going to have a cap of what they're going to spend. Usually if somebody does an IE, it's going to be an educational evaluation. If for some reason you have a neuropsych provider that's taking education evaluation funds, I would take that all day long, but that would be unusual.
If someone says that they have their first IEP meeting in California on June 1st, do you recommend any sites that they can learn about their rights in California?
I would reach out to the Department of Education for California. I would get a copy of your procedural safeguards. When you're at the meeting, ask every question that you have. Write down your questions before you get there. If you don't agree, you can table the meeting, you can reconvene, but make sure that you get your questions answered. In 1.5 days, it's going to be hard to learn all of your rights as a special ed parent, but certainly ask the questions as you go, and no question is not important.
Should I be notified that my child is being taught by a non-certified teacher?
It's your responsibility, and it's very easy to do. If my child is in school, I'm going to look up all of the education providers' certificates. I have the right to know all of their names, and I have the right to know who's providing my child an educational product. And so whatever state you're in, it will list them as an LPC, an LSSP, an SLP, a UPS, a FedEx, an OPI, a certified teacher, a teacher on a temporary license. You can have a teacher, a general ed teacher on a temporary license. There are no temporary licensures for special education. It doesn't exist. So in October of 2022, OSEP, the Office of Special Education Programs, put out an updated letter that if you're the special educator, which means if you are the special education teacher, or you are related or instructional service provider, or provide counseling as a related service, or a social worker, you have to have a special education certification. No exemptions or exceptions.
What do you do if the school says something in the prior written notice that you didn't say?
So when I get a prior written notice that I disagree with, I respond with my recollection of what happened in the meeting. You have an account of what the school person who typed up says, and then you have an account of what you said. That's going to go, and then have them attach that to the deliberations, the case conference notes, the PPT notes, whatever, so it stays with the document.
How do you find the school district's discrepancy scale? My child was denied today just by this.
You're going to reach out to the state. Let's say that you're in Missouri. You would reach out to the Department of Education for Missouri and say, hey, I was in a meeting and they said that my student doesn't qualify based on the state's discrepancy scale, the discrepancy model. Can you please provide me that in the code? And even if a state has a discrepancy model, any state can qualify a student based on the intensity and time a student has been in RTI. Please reach out to state compliance. Your state compliance people are phenomenal. You need to access them.
And I was asked to sign the signature page of the IEP without having the actual IEP. I was told this is standard. Is this correct?
You're going to be asked to sign the IEP at the conclusion of the IEP minute. The only language in the federal law about the school providing you an IEP is that they provide you one without charging you. So if you've got through the IEP meeting, I assume that you went through all the components. I would sign that I agree. I would sign that I disagree. I would sign an attendance and say I want to table it and reconvene. But I don't necessarily have I don't expect her to finish the final document, because as we were working, I was saying, okay, Shannon, can we adjust this? Christina, can we adjust this? And so I'm not asking her to fix all of that during a business meeting, but in good faith, I'm going to assume that they're going to fix it before they lock it and send me a final copy.
And if we don't agree with the decision and they can't provide a policy to support the denial, what can I get done?
You have to execute one of your 6 dispute resolution options, which are a grievance with the district, a state complaint, mediation, dispute resolution session, due process, or a U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights complaint.
Wait, is that true? The 45 days needed for evaluation cannot start until I sign the IEP.
It's true that they cannot start till you sign consent, correct?
Is it legal to have one classroom out of 4 to not have IEP children or non-English speaking children?
No, there's no requirements about that.
My son has an intellectual disability and never qualifies for extended school year. What can I do?
So extended school year services are built on one of 2 criteria. Number 1, does the student have documented regression on their IEP goals with a profound amount of time to recoup those skills? Number 2 is concern for loss of critical skills. So if I have a child that has an intellectual disability, I'm always going to ask for ESY if that's the parent's request, for concern of loss of critical skills. I don't want him to lose those skills that we worked on gaining all year.
What do you say about the 30 hours that are required for 45-45, whether they be summer, before, or after school?
Read my lips. Waste of time. Yep, it's a waste of time. And here's the thing with House Bill 45 hours. If your child didn't pass that, the hours are grade level. Usually the reason a child didn't pass it is because they have deficits, they're not at grade level, but it is a waste of time.
My student is dyslexic and has 5 goals, but only getting 30 minutes a month. Should there be?
What?
Not a trick question.
Yes. Yeah. 30 minutes a month wouldn't help me find all my brow pencils. No. It's a no. Seriously, people? Would you give them 30 minutes of quarterback football training a month? No. There's that.
If a child has a diagnosis of anxiety disorder and cries every day over school, can he get an IEP
Absolutely.
test?
Absolutely. If you have I have lots of kiddos that they don't have a single academic goal on their IEP. They have emotional needs. Absolutely.
And how do we bring up taking our child out of class to attend ABA?
Don't. And here's what I mean by that. If you believe as a family that your child needs to be in ABA, if you believe that your child needs ABA, I would tell you to put them in ABA. The modality of public school and ABA couldn't be more different, and you're really splitting the skills that he's learning. Additionally, if you take your child out of school for ABA during the instructional day, you have removed the criteria for him to be provided FAPE because you've reduced the day.
And how much can a child with an IEP for oppositional defiant disorder be suspended?
So when a child has a disability and there is an action that requires consideration for discipline, we look and see if the disciplinary action was a result or a characteristic of his disability. If it was, then we need to look at either no consequence or an appropriate consequence.
Is the school in violation for not giving my child speech therapy for the past 3 years?
If he has a speech eligibility and he's supposed to have speech minutes, then yes.
Neuropsych exam diagnosed autism. The IEP review is in December. Do I push for it to be earlier?
Yeah. What is the one thing you're not going to get back? Time. The time is now.
Is it legal to give one SED teacher 80 students on their caseload as long as it's 15 kids per class?
There is no caseload limit, unfortunately.
And do I have to agree to send my son to summer school program?
The only reason that you would have to agree to summer school is if it was for credit recovery for high school credits. But again, you can get your high school credits you can do them online. There'd have to be a really weighty reason why.
And what is the difference between a 504 and an IEP?
So a 504 is a civil rights law. It is not an education plan. In Texas, there are 605,000 students on IEP. It costs the school district $0 to $2 for a 504. There's no education. There's no measurement. There's no goals. And they can call your 8-year-old down and say, hey, you don't really need this 504, do you? And never tell the parents at a meeting with your 8-year-old. An IEP is an individualized education program designed to mitigate the impact of your child's disability across all content areas.
And we agreed in the deliberations to include my child in school events. The very next day, he was excluded from assembly. Is this correct?
It's not correct, but it's really important when we make changes to the IEP that we make sure that it is then sent out to everybody that provides your child an educational benefit. So let's say that we decided that Bonnie's daughter was now going to have a 5-minute check-in with her case manager a week and then a 5-minute check-out. We agreed that in the meeting, there's one general ed teacher, one special ed teacher, and let's say that she's in 8th grade. All those teachers there don't know that. So what I'll say in the meeting is whoever the case manager is, any updates or changes we've made, can you please send that out in an email? So I'm not saying that it wasn't on purpose, but there's a likelihood that they had not received the updated IEP.
Catherine is asking that she was told that paras were only for bad kids. Is that correct? I was told that they will only get, I guess her child will only get a parent if he's bad.
Bad? I don't know what a bad kid is. I know what kids are. I know a child that has needs that needs to be addressed. Kids aren't good or bad. They're children. Paras are for a child that needs additional support to access their educational product.
And Veronica says that her child has dyslexia at a charter school. What accommodations are they required to give?
They're required to give accommodations that student needs based on their disability. So a specific disability doesn't require specific accommodations. The impact of the disability requires the accommodation. So I would have to see their full IEP and their FIE to know what that is. To get the same kind of services at a charter school, and nobody wants to hear that, and that you're going to get at a public school. It just is. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it would be rare.
People are asking, several are asking, where do they find an advocate?
You would email advocate@specialeducationacademy.com. We have a gaggle of them, and they're all just as lovely as I am, if you can imagine that.
What are your current thoughts on the backed up AISD evaluation?
Oh, Austin Independent School District, God bless them. That's a problem. We got that backup going on a lot here in the Houston area in certain districts, which I will not name. Our advocates are coast to coast. Where was I today? In North Carolina, in Alaska, Florida. If you're in the United States, we have advocates to service your child.
And can you remove a student who is destroying a classroom? What about the general education students?
So every child is a general ed student. Let's not ever forget that. If a child is completely dysregulated, it's probably not best that they stay in class. It would be important that we provide a more appropriate setting for that kiddo. Yeah, it's advocate@specialeducationacademy.com, and we will get you guys an advocate.
Is ESY typically delivered by a speech therapist without a special education teacher?
ESY is only for special education, special ed students, so there'd have to be a special ed teacher there.
And can a BIP be used for a student that is sleeping?
A behavior intervention plan. So if a student's sleeping, it's my experience there's something else going on there. There's a reason a child's sleeping, and that might be what's going on at their home. That might be medical issues. That might be depression. But sleeping is not a behavior I need to intervene. That's something totally different. I would ask for a psychological evaluation if I had a child that was sleeping.
And if my child has a 504, can I exempt her from homework? She is in high school.
You can reduce things on a 504 up to 50%. Anything over 50% is special ed.
All right. Leslie is asking that her grandson was diagnosed with ADHD, OCD, and PTSD, but denied an IEP. Is this correct?
It doesn't sound correct. Yeah.
And are schools required to keep writing samples after the progress reports have been done?
So there's no timelines on keeping data. If I want to see my child's data and the school is not just delivering it to me, then I will do an open records FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act, or the Family Education Protective Act request to get my child's open records.
Christine wants to know, how do you become an advocate?
You would just reach out to us at advocate@specialeducationacademy.com. We have trainings. We have a training in June that's in person, and then we have a virtual, which you should all attend in July. It'll be a live 2-day event via the Zoom. And then you should all join the academy. We have the academy every week for a couple of hours where we teach on this bad boy, the federal law, and how to implement and apply that for your kids' services. Please, if you're thinking of leaving education to be an advocate, please let us train you.
And then, how are reading SLD and dyslexia different in SPED? And then I will send it to Shannon.
Dyslexia is the one eligibility that can be served under general ed or special ed. Based on the acuity of a child's dyslexia, it might rise to the level of needing dyslexia provided by a special education teacher. But a specific learning disability is what we expect an unexpected area in their cognitive and achievement profile with specificity around a certain academic achievement, whether it's listening comprehension, oral expression, written expression, math calculations, math computations, dyslexia, reading fluency, reading comprehension, or basic reading.
Is there a minimum amount of time the school psych should observe a child before testing for special education?
Not before testing. A good psych is going to do 3 observations in 3 different settings. That's a really good question. Do you need a college degree to be an advocate? I do not have a college degree. I'm a certified mediator for the family courts, but you don't need a college degree to be an advocate, nor do you need a specific certification to be an advocate.
So someone is asking, what's the difference between accommodations and modification?
Accommodation changes how you learn, and a modification changes what you learn. So I'm being accommodated right now. I'm sitting in a chair. I could stand up and do this training. It wouldn't change anything. But a modification, I'm changing the learner expectation.
Can a school remove a child from his home campus because they can't accommodate him?
They can remove him from the campus to a more appropriate setting that meets his educational needs.
My son struggles to keep hands to himself, usually at lunch or recess, ASD with an IEP. Any advice?
So at lunch and recess, if it's at lunch, I'm going to reach out to the OT and sensory and ask if we can make him a busy box at lunch. Sometimes kiddos, when they don't have anything to do, if they finish quickly, if they finish their work quickly, if they finish eating quickly, or they're going to get into shenanigans with other kiddos. If kids don't know how to play with other kiddos, then they're not successful in recess. So we can set up training in any of those areas.
My child was denied an aid, suffers from seizures. What can I do?
I would need more language around that. If your child suffers from seizures, an aid, I don't know that I would want them to have an aid. I certainly would want them to have appropriate nursing services. An aid couldn't stop a seizure, but if you need that level of support to access nursing, then I would certainly consider that.
And a school say my son has ASD if I don't agree.
The school can indicate what testing, what is the conclusion of the testing. If you disagree with that testing, that's when you would ask for the independent education evaluation.
So we have a couple more people asking how to find an advocate.
Advocate at specialeducationacademy.com.
And then someone's asking, is it free to join the academy?
If you email us, we'll get you 2 weeks for free to the academy, and that way you can see if you can try it before you buy it. It's $47 a month after that. We have hundreds of hours over the last many years archived on there. So you could binge watch and train all the past trainings we've had for over 2 years. And they all have workbooks. And the academy, you can stay as long as you want. You can stay a month, you can stay forever. You can cancel it anytime if you need to.
My son had a non-certified teacher teaching for 3 years. How can we get compensatory time?
So compensatory time is based on if the student's IDEA rights were violated. And that comes usually after a filing or a really good advocate representing you. I got compensatory time today in a meeting without filing, triple what the offer was from the school district. So it just depends what you're asking for. Compensatory time is built on proof of lack of delivery of services.
My daughter's data tracking shows failure of the teachers to meet her goals. What do I do?
So if a child didn't meet the goal, then there's an onus, a duty, responsibility of the LEA to call an IEP meeting to look at adjusting those goals, adjusting the criteria, or maybe even adjusting the program or product that we give them.
How can I provide evidence for an ESY service due to inability to recoup lost curriculum due to absences?
So absences are not criteria for ESY.
Special ed preschool giving progress reports after school has ended. Is this normal?
No, you're supposed to give progress reports commensurate with the same grading periods with the school district. So if that's every 6 weeks, every 9 weeks.
What is compensatory time?
Compensatory time is time awarded to the student. If I do a formal filing, whether it's a federal filing, a state filing, or a mediation, it would be considered relief to the student, and they would determine what that relief is. The relief, it was a decision from a hearing officer, is to return the student back to where they would have been had the IDEA violation never occurred. So it's not minute for minute. Depending on the situation, the age of the child, the disability, it's going to at least be minute for minute, but it's usually going to be more.
And this is in regards to the seizure question a minute ago.
Yeah.
So he suffers from seizures, Dravet syndrome. Therefore, should I ask for a nurse?
Depending on, does he need his oxygen checked? Does he need to be dosed? Certain kids need a specific medical protocol during the day. I have kiddos that have severe seizures that have a full-time nurse, but they don't have a full-time para because a para doesn't have medical training.
My sophomore didn't meet his IEP goals. What should I do now?
So we need to write an IEP where he can meet his goals. So if he didn't meet his goal, there's a reason. It's not his fault. If he wasn't there, there's one thing, but it's the school district's responsibility to write an IEP for enable him to make progress in light of his unique circumstances. We don't just let the whole year go by and nothing happens to progress him. So I would definitely call a review IEP as soon as school starts to look at rewriting the IEP because obviously it's not effective.
And a son deliver IEP resource minute.
If she's a special ed teacher.
What can I do if I don't agree with an IE?
So the IEE can be a slippery slope. So an IEE is delivered to the school district. The school district doesn't have to accept any of the findings or add any of the recommendations, or they can accept all of them. They do have to provide one to you at their expense. But there are some times that parents get an IE back that they don't agree with, just like they get an evaluation they don't agree with. But there's not another step after that for a year. You can retest every year.
Is the school district required to pay for dyslexia testing if they are not equipped to test?
No such thing as not equipped.
Can a teacher be an advocate if teacher no longer teaches at the school?
Yeah. It says
Someone's asking, do advocates work during the summer?
advocates have the blessing of working all year. Yes, because special ed never stops. So for our advocates now, we're getting a lot of clients because they realized that year was a bust. So we're doing records review. We have hearings in the summer. We have mediations. And school starts pretty quickly. But it's only about 2 months off. So our advocates range starting at $50 an hour and then more depending on experience.
And lots of people are saying thank you and they love you.
Oh, I love y'all back.
What is the most common testing for dyslexia?
So unfortunately, the most common testing for dyslexia is a dyslexia screener asks for a full evaluation in IQ to include all 7 Gs, and then asks for full achievement to include reading, writing, and math, and then listening comprehension and oral expression. And that way you will identify or eliminate all 9 SLDs instead of looking at 1. And just know there's no credentials. All you need to be an advocate is to have a beating heart in your chest. If you don't have a beating heart in your chest, then you cannot be an advocate. That is the starting criteria. And we hope you like children and that you have a high pain tolerance for adults. Isn't that right, ladies?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry,
The 7 Gs. So the 7 Gs are the 7 brain skills. It's how you're cooked, and it tells you how a student learns best. Somebody asked the difference between accommodations and modifications. Accommodations changes how you learn. A modification changes what you learn. Somebody asked the difference between an IEP and a 504. 504 is a waste of your time. I can tell you, I've done this for 27 years. Your child does not need a 504. But if your child did have a 504, it means they have a disability and they need accommodations. An IEP means your child has a disability and they need an individualized education plan that has goals, support, strategies, and we're going to measure ways to mitigate the impact of their disability.
How often should a child with autism get reevaluated?
As often as it's appropriate. We don't just keep evaluating kids. If we've identified their disability and the acuity of it, and there's not a need to make those adjustments for present levels, then we don't need to retest. But certainly at the triennial, I would re-evaluation at least to get updated behavioral rating scales.
What all can a district provide for my child if his speech is not improving?
One of the first things that we want to look at if your child's speech is not improving is looking at a VOCD, a voice output communication device. And we're shamed into not getting, you don't want that, you don't want that. He's just going to start talking. The biggest gap in the world and the biggest gap in education is communication. If your child cannot communicate within the normed range, we think that they can't learn, and we end up sticking them in self-contained classes. So the voice output communication device is the most amazing thing for kids that qualify for it. We have a very long, robust training in the academy about the Assistive Technology Act of 1998 that requires that schools provide them services and products around that. So avail yourself of that.
Can a teacher tape down a square to the floor to force their child to stand there if they have severe ADHD?
No, we're not boarding pets. These are humans. That's ridiculous. I do want to answer a question about 504 and a waste of time. So let me just elaborate. The only time that I would think a 504 would be appropriate is if that's the ridiculous avenue that you have to have for your child to get dyslexia. But let's talk about that for a second. I don't have kids that have dyslexia solely. Kids do not solely have dyslexia. If you do a full evaluation, I can count on one hand the kids in 27 years that also didn't have another eligibility, whether it's ADHD and attentive, whether it's emotional needs, whether it's one of the other 9 SLDs. So be very cautious if you think your child just has dyslexia. But I've had a couple of kids over the years that needed a 504 and they were classically dyslexic and they had no other disabilities. That is going to be unbelievably rare.
I'm going to ask one more and then I'll pass that on. What criteria need to be met in order for a child to be eligible for an IEP?
They have a disability that impacts them at school, and they are in need of special education and related services. Somebody asked about, does the state require WPM to apply to a child with ADHD? So WCPM, that's a good question, Paula. Words correct per minute are vitally important for kiddos. You want to make sure that your kiddos, that you know what the words correct per minute are. We use 90 Years of Oral Reading Fluency by Hansbrook and Tinsdale. It's a great document. You can get it on eric.ed. ERIC is the national database of all educational forms since 1965. Mr. Williams is from the Teacher Podcast. When your child test is average, there's something more, and keep denying IEPs. So Miss Megan will be getting your child an IEE. What if asking for an FIE didn't get formal testing in all areas as requested? Then you go back and get those areas. You have them do an addendum to add those areas. The website is specialeducationacademy.com.
Rob's 143 asks, should the school provide the talking device if he's nonverbal? They told her that she should buy one. Is this correct?
No. So the Assistive Technology Act of 1998 requires that the school provide your student any assistive technology that they need to benefit from their education. Any, whether it's modified, built, or it literally says, or purchased off the shelf. The assistive technology devices are expensive, they're robust, and it's the duty of the school district to pay for it. There's even a section in the federal code, the statute, the congressional act, that when they leave school, if they still need it, that they have a way to purchase it at an appropriate cost from the district. When the teacher is absent, is it okay for the students to be supervised by the para? It's okay for them to be supervised, but they're not receiving any education. The raw data collection sheets and why districts hate to. I think some teachers hate to do the raw data collection sheets because nobody taught them to do that from the beginning, and they didn't teach them to do that efficiently. It's part of their job. I'm sorry if somebody didn't tell them about the totality of their job.
Now back to the AAC. Is ECSE included in that?
Yep. By the time they get there, 3 years old. There's no such thing as an emergency certification for special education. She said, as a special education teacher, it's shocking how many teachers do not take hard data. We just finished a mastermind. We have a 20-hour, 10-week mastermind. And the teacher who retired and now she's an advocate, her coworker goes, oh, you don't have to take data. It's all right here. What do you mean it's all right here? Can accommodations take the place of a goal? No, they're two totally different things. An IEP goal is required to address an identified deficit. An accommodation is to support an IEP goal. Come be an advocate. We would love to train you and send you back to rock your state and region. Here's the great thing about being an advocate. I've been sitting here at my desk advocating, never leaving my office to advocate since March 13th, 2020. Everything is done via Zoom. Everything. So I have the opportunity in Texas to be granted the ability to represent families in due process hearings. Those are all done by Zoom. Mediations are done by Zoom. IEPs are done by Zoom. So you don't even have to leave your house. I do know of advocates in College Station. I've got kiddos that I serve in College Station. And I do want to say, just because you don't need an advocate that is in your zip code, I advocate all over the nation. It has nothing to do with showing up in person. If you have an advocate that lives in your area, then and you want that, then certainly use that. But there's just as many good advocates that can join you remotely. Yep. Send us an email if you want to know more about our training. You want to join the academy. You don't need a legal degree, pass the bar. Nope. I don't have any of those things. You do need an advocate who knows the games the district and school pools. Yeah. That's, yes. What do you think of Louisville ISD, good or bad? I don't have any current clients in Louisville ISD. That doesn't necessarily mean it's good. I don't find school districts to be good or bad. I find humans that are ill-equipped to do their job in special education in school district. We have great advocates that we've trained in St. Louis. I have clients in New Jersey, and New Hampshire.
All right, I have a question from Landline Ray. So, and ECSC included with providing an AAC device?
If you are in special education in America between the ages of 3 and 22 and you need an AAC device, they have to get it for you. Hello.
And plug it in.
Yeah, I had a child that she's like, Karen, the AAC device comes and it's not charged. I said, we're going to fix that problem. The $16,000 eye gaze, Toby, you just keep it at school and we'll have you buy her another one for at home. 2, problem. So that's what advocates do. We solve problems.
Yes. Someone asked, why isn't it possible that a student qualifies for an IEP in one state but not in another?
Now, I guess we could have taught that student strategies to self-manage their disability, but that would be highly unusual.
Someone asked, when you get it, what would an evaluation be that a student would get to get these?
I'm going to ask for a couple of things. I'm going to ask for a formal assistive technology evaluation, in communication. I'm going to ask for the SLP to partner with them to look and see if there's a need for an assistive technology as it relates to communication. I'm going to ask that they trial at least 3 different applications for an appropriate amount of time. And I'm going to ask that they use the SET framework.
Now, continuing with my AAC area. So do I just ask them to provide with an AAC device?
Yes.
App or the program install?
Yes. They need to provide the device with the correct application on the device. They need to provide the whole thing.
And how determine if the student gets AAC?
The evaluation makes recommendations to the committee. But at the end of the day, the committee can make decisions on their own so that a child has a successful individualized education program. We don't default to one member of the committee. That's why it's a multidisciplinary team.
You mean there's no voting? Is there voting at the table?
There's no voting.
Dyslexia diagnosis. What should a district be providing?
It depends on the severity of the dyslexia. Usually the standard protocol for dyslexia intervention is 30 minutes 4 times a week or 45 minutes.
Follow-up question. Wait, does that mean the school administrator doesn't get veto power?
There's no veto. Nobody has a gavel at the meeting. You have a lot of people spread really thin in a co-op. If you want to be me, just join one of our trainings. We want a bunch of little baby bosses all over this nation serving kids with disabilities and serving committees.
All right. So this PLAB question, if a teacher's comments and observation seem rude to me, do I call it out or do I leave it?
So rude is not a thing. I would say they're discriminatory, right? I would say statements like he doesn't even try is a discriminatory statement. You don't know what's going on in his little body or head. So you could say he's unsuccessful in math, but you don't get to say he didn't try.
So what other book in your link tree would you consider an essential to always have available? Always.
This one. The DSM-5 criteria with tabs. These two I have under my pillow. So the federal law, the DSM-5 criteria is it's the diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders. So it really gives you a starting place for a number of disabilities I don't like somebody telling me what something is when they don't have the training. I don't like that.
What is too low to qualify for special education? When you get a child on an IEP, 10 of a 504 that is offered?
So that's too low to qualify for special education. That's a lie. There's no such thing as you're too low. I don't know what too low means. You determine the level of support that a child needs based on the evaluation. But we've heard they're too disabled to help. Then you should leave the building, ma'am.
The federal book that you just showed, is that relevant to all states?
If you're in the United States of America, this is the federal code. It's like federal. It goes everywhere.
All right. One more. Can a school retain my child while we are waiting for them to be complete for their evaluation?
So retention is an administrative decision. So that would be unusual. That would be unusual for your child to be retained. We'll take one more question.
Someone asked, how can we train with you?
So you would email us at advocate@specialeducationacademy.com. You can take the 2-day class right this second. We have one on demand. We want you to be trained so that you can go be an advocate. You're not attached to me. You don't have to drink the Karen Kool-Aid because believe me, that has a lot of sugar in it. But we want you to be equipped so you can be the most amazing advocate however you sit at the IEP table. Thanks, you guys. Remember, when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.
Hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change, we're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.